Recently we bought this truck cap that's right behind me on my truck. We're going to eventually make a sleeping platform in the bed of the truck that we can use when we go on our camping trips in the future. But that's a ways away. I haven't really quite planned out all the details on that yet. But in the meantime, I have to find a way to carry my kayaks on this guy because the rack that I have won't be able to work with the truck cap on. So, looking around on the internet, a lot of the racks that you can use to put on those can be pretty pricey. So I think I found a way that I can make one customized for my needs at a lot lower price. So that's what this video is going to be about today. Before I get started, I do want to just say that this is a rack that I made of my own design using some Unistrut from the store. And because of that and the nature of the Unistrut, it can be customizable, scaled up or scaled down however you'd want to do it if you want to make something similar to this. I am probably going to only be using this for kayaks most of the time. So if you wanted to make a full scale rack that goes the length of the truck, you could perfectly do that with this system. Alright, let's get started on it. These first sections will need to be cut to 60 inches. 4 of these will make up the cross members of the rack. Again, any of these measurements can be scaled up or down for your needs. The material I'm using is 12 gauge, 1 5/8 inch by 13/16 inch strut. These typically come in 10-foot sections at your hardware store. To allow for an easier cut, I take a Dremel tool and make small grooves along my cut line on the corners. Now there are many ways you can cut this material. I happen to have a hacksaw and bimetal blade on hand. It's not the easiest solution, and as you can see in a bit, I don't recommend it. When you almost cut all the way through the material, you can stop cutting and bend the material back and forth, and it should snap pretty cleanly. This next piece I have is for the braces and the end pieces for the rack. It's 12 gauge as well, and 1 5/8 inch by 1 5/8 inch wide. All of the pieces cut from this material will be 18 inches long. It was at about this time where I realized I had to do this 11 more times. That's tiring. So I ran over to my dad's house and stole this. I spend a good amount of time filing these down and making sure there are no sharp corners or edges. When using the rack, I anticipate coming in contact with it a good bit, and I want to avoid any cuts. Alright, well, the hard part's over. Got all that cut. Had to cut 12 pieces of the thicker stuff and 2 of the thinner stuff. So now the rest of it's going to be pretty simple. So this Unistrut comes with brackets like this, and they also have just straight bars. They have T's, they have all sorts of stuff. And all you do is you place them approximately where you need them in order to get the angle that you desire. And since I'm only using right angle connections on this, all I have are these right angle brackets. And now you use these nuts right here in combination with a bolt like this. And these nuts have these little teeth on them right here. So what those let you do is once you stick them in this channel and rotate them around, these teeth will bite up onto the rails and keep it a really strong connection, really tight. So I shouldn't have to do anything else than this. This will be very, very tight. We'll see. So what I'm going to do, this is just an example right now. These aren't the actual pieces I'm going to be connecting. I'm going to basically approximate where I'm going to put those nuts. Make a little mark on either side of the holes. Take my bracket away. And then stick these nuts in and rotate it. And this spring helps keep the nut up tight so you don't have to worry about fishing around for it whenever you're putting your bolt in. So I'm just going to place these nuts approximately where they need to go, where my marks were. And these springs can be kind of tricky, so that's why I made the marks. There's also some better ones that have cones that just kind of rest on top of here. You don't have to fiddle with the springs, but they weren't available in the size that I needed, so I wasn't able to get those. Anyway, once you have the springs in, you can grab your bracket and drop your bolts in. Align them, get them started. And then just tighten them down. So just like that, got a really tight connection, so that'll be good, real solid. I can tighten it down a little bit more. So I'm going to push this all the way to the edge so you can kind of get an idea what those teeth look like. And you see how those little teeth just bite into the rails right there, so that's going to be very tight, very strong. Alright, well I'm going to put the whole assembly together. Let's see how it comes out. Alright, so these two long skinnier rails are going to be the crossbars that go across that actually support the loads I'm going to be putting. I'm going to have two sets of these. So the assembly I'm about to make right now, there's going to be two of them. Now these shorter pieces I've been cutting, I'm going to have, these are going to be our end bars, one here and then one on this side. And I'm going to have them offset about 2 inches in. And the reason I'm going to have that is so that whenever I go to lash anything on top of here, I'll have a corner, a nice corner right here, so that the actually it'll look like this, sorry. So that way anything I wrap around here won't have the opportunity to slip around the corner and come undone. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this assembled, just like I just showed in the previous clip. All right, I have my first fully assembled rail, and now I just have to take these shorter pieces that I've cut. These are about 18 inches long, and these are gonna go underneath here, and this is what's gonna actually rest on the truck cap. So I believe they're gonna be spaced out 44 inches apart. I'm gonna have these situated right there like that. I can do final adjustments because I can move it down here and there as I need it. But what I'm gonna do is find the closest hole, put my bolt through there, and because this isn't the typical connection you'd make, I got these extra washers that I can drop in there and use that same nut right here to attach these two pieces right here. I'll do a similar situation right here whenever I go to attach this to the truck cap. Well, here's an issue. This washer is just a little bit too wide. It fits perfectly if I had it open, and you can see this right here. But because this is closed, can't do it. So I'm gonna have to take this piece off right here, slide it in. Another issue right here. Can't fit my ratchet in there to tighten this down. So, I'm not sure what to do actually. It's kind of a problem. Fingers aren't strong enough. I could either cut a notch out exactly where it needs to go, which is what I may have to do. I'd hate to do that, but the other option would be to get a smaller bolt. probably what I'll have to do. All right, here's my solution. Instead of having the washers run along inside the track, I'm just gonna have the washers sit on top. It'll bridge that gap enough, and this bolt's just long enough to where I can get it down in there and hit that nut. Not ideal, but it should work. Don't have to go buy anything extra. And this shouldn't get in the way of anything I plan on putting on here, because I will have a cradle that's gonna be sitting up here I'm gonna fashion for my kayaks, so this shouldn't really get in the way. But all right, that's what it is going forward. All right, actually, scratch that. As I started tightening this down, I can clearly see this washer is starting to deflect. So I don't really trust that to hold very tight. So what I may do is try to use one of these bolts. I may need to get some smaller washers, but do the same idea but with a smaller size bolt. All right, here's my final idea. Got these smaller 3/8 inch diameter cone nuts that are very similar to these spring nuts, but instead of the pushing down the spring, you push this cone in there instead. And the cone's a little bit easier to use because it doesn't get caught up on these holes. You don't get these springs tangled up. But like I said earlier, I could not find these in these 1/2 inch diameter size, so I did have some of these for a separate project, and I also have some smaller washers and some smaller bolts on hand, so I will have to go buy some more for my other project that I plan on using these for. But for this idea, I can fit a new washer in here, a 3/8 inch washer, 3/8 inch bolt, this nut, and I can fit my socket in there. So, got it solved here. This is the reason these cone nuts are so much nicer right here, because you can stick these guys in there, slide them around, no problem. A little bit easier to handle, and they're not as messy. So, then when you get it tightened down, that cone, that plastic right there just gets crushed underneath it. It's very thin plastic, so you just tighten it down until it crushes it, and it's practically flat. Alright, so here's both of them assembled. So one is basically going to go on the back, and one will go on the front. So I'm going to call it a day, and tomorrow I'm just going to dry fit it on the camper shell itself, and then I will spray paint it and mount it on for permanently. Alright, so what I did now is I took the truck cap off the truck, took the 2 rails that I made and dry fit them on here, and measured them, squared them all up, made sure exactly where I want them before I drill any kind of holes. Now what I had to do was I had to find some good reference faces, because this thing does have so many curves and everything. I found on the window, I was able to find the center point, just transferred that center point up to here, lined it up with this, made sure everything was square. And then on the other side, it was a little bit trickier because it didn't have as many sharp angles, so I had to use the 3rd tail light as a reference face. Found the center line, transferred it over, aligned everything, got it as square as I can possibly make it. It's not absolutely perfect, but it'll work, and I don't think it'll be that noticeable. It'll be like 1/16 of an inch here, 1/8 of an inch there, nothing crazy. It passes the eye test, that's for sure. The only other thing I did was I did lop these corners off of these rails right here, mainly to give it a little bit more of a appealing look from the side, instead of having that square edge. And also underneath, where I'm going to actually fasten these other pieces, I cut those off as well, because these will be inside where we'll be inhabiting the space, so I didn't want us to hit our heads on something sharp like that. So that should be a more gradual edge right there, so we will have less of a chance of hurting ourselves if we're inside the camper. Also, I'm going to be spraying this with some primer, probably 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of bed liner spray, and that should help with any of the edges as well. There are also some plastic caps you can use to put on these ends. I may do that. I didn't grab any, but all I'd have to do is snap them on. I'll probably do that in the future, but for now, I'm about to take these back off. Well, first, sorry, I'm going to mark where the holes are going to be drilled. I'm going to drill the holes. Another thing to keep in mind before drilling any holes is make sure underneath you're not going to be hitting anything important. As you can see on mine, there's a gradual bump out right here. It kind of goes from thinner to a lot thicker right here. So I want to make sure I'm avoiding any of that, and from my spacing, you can see where I'm going to be drilling, I'm not going to be hitting anything, so I'll be okay. So I wanted to make sure of that before. Also look at any corners, make sure there's no differences that you're going to have any kind of interference. Just something that can possibly avoid a headache, and this drilling is probably the most critical part I want to make sure you got everything perfect. So what I'm going to do is, if you can see right here, I took an old chisel that I don't care about, and I'm just scratching the paint slightly just right there to mark where I'm going to drill my holes. So I'm going to go around and do all that and then drill the holes. Wish me luck. All right, one thing to note is if you have headliner underneath on the ceiling of your strut cap, once you punch through, stop. Headliner will actually get bunched up like that. So I'm gonna actually have to take like a knife or something to poke through that felt, and then so that way I can put my bolt through. So once you hit through that fiberglass, just go ahead and stop drilling. Just like that. So I got 2 holes drilled, 6 more to go. All right, so they're all painted. Got the bed liner sprayed on them. So I did 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of bed liner. Bed liner went a little bit better than the primer. It sprays on a little bit more evenly. So now I've got them roughly next to where they're gonna go. I stuck some adhesive foam on here, and that's gonna help deaden the sound and vibration, as well as help with some weather stripping. So now I'm just gonna use some all-purpose weatherproofing silicone, put a good amount around each of these holes, place the rack over the hole where it needs to go, and place this bolt assembly through there. So what I have going on here is I've got a bolt, a washer, a rubber washer, and this will go on top of the through the hole right here. On the underside, I'm going to crawl underneath and put this locking washer and then a nut. And that'll be the assembly. So I've got 8 of those, and I'm gonna do that right now. All right, so see where that hole is with the slit?
Yeah.
We're gonna lift it up straight and just put it right over where that silicone is, so it's gonna stick. So once I put it on there, it's permanent, right? Ready?
Yeah.
All right, got it? Oh.
Mark.
Okay, can you go around the back?
Oh my gosh, I see it.
Shush.
I'm kidding.
All right, so here is the finished product. It's pretty sturdy. And one thing I didn't mention earlier was I weighed these guys, and each one of these pieces weighs about 25 pounds each. So all I'm putting on my camper top right now is about 50 pounds. So once I put my kayaks on there, probably about 30 to 40 pounds each, maybe 100 pounds total. So 150 pounds total will be on top of this guy most of the time. That's max. I don't think that the kayaks actually weigh that much. So, all right, well, that's it. Thanks for watching.